Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the second day of Metering India 2017. This is session 4, which is titled Policy 360 Degrees. Yesterday, we heard a lot of the speakers talk about what they have done in their respective fields in order to achieve this objective of smart and sustainable utilities. But we also know that any initiative taken in this direction has to have the support of strong policy and regulation. Today we'll have the opportunity to hear all sides of the coin, from the policy makers to the implementers to the industry view. I now request the session chair, Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, to kindly grace the dais. While he is joining us on the stage, I'll just read his profile. Shri Ghanshyam Prasad is presently appointed as Chief Engineer Distribution Planning and Development in Central Electricity Authority, Ministry of Power, Government of India. In his earlier assignment in Ministry of Power, he looked after grid operation and monitoring, transmission and power grid. He has experience in the areas of power system operation at load dispatch centers, long-term integrated resource planning, performance monitoring of all the power stations, monitoring of coal supplies to all the power plants, cross-border power trade with neighboring countries, etc. He has also served for around 6 years in Haryana Electricity Regulatory Commissions and has looked after various reforms in electricity in India. He is a BTech from Indian Institute of Technology, BHU Varanasi, MTech from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and MBA in Finance from IGNOU. Welcome, sir. I now request Mr. Vishal Kapoor to kindly take the stage. Mr. Vishal Kapoor is Director Distribution in the Ministry of Power, Government of India. He heads the distribution division of the Ministry of Power and coordinates the work of the Integrated Power Development Scheme, National Electricity Fund, Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, which is UDAY, and other distribution reforms being undertaken by the ministry. In his previous assignments, he has a wide and diverse experience on Indian railways, especially in the field of railway traction, as well as in freight cars. He holds a degree in mechanical engineering and is one of the only few practicing fellows of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, UK, in India today. He holds a postgraduate degree in public administration from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore, and has a distinction of figuring in its Dean's List for academic performance in the year 2014-2015. Welcome, sir. I request Mr. A.K. Mishra, Director, NSGM, to take the stage. Mr. Arun Kumar Mishra is General Manager at Power Grid of India Limited. He has 24 years of experience in planning and design of power systems, SCADA implementation, and also in smart grids. A distinguished member of SIGRE India, National System Committee on Information Systems and Telecommunications, as well as members of BIS Sectional Committee of LITD 10 for Power System Control and Associated Communications. He has undertaken feasibility studies and requirement analysis of load dispatch centers, aka LDCs, and design of their large complex communication networks. His published technical papers include Indian experience in implementation of SCADA, EMS systems in IEEE PowerTech 2005, Cybersecurity in Indian Power Sector and Grid Tech 2011, and Future Grid Control Centers for Indian Power Systems in SIGRE. Presently, he serves as Director, NSGM, since April 2017. Welcome, sir. I request Mr. Rajesh Bansal to kindly take the stage. Mr. Rajesh Bansal has done his graduation in electronic engineering in 1985 and he started his career as scientist at ISRO. He was involved in the development of the first single-phase tamper-proof ASIC and electronic meter in India and has been working in this field for the last 20 years. Since 2004, he is working at BSES Delhi and he has done many key projects related to energy meters, loss reduction, meter data analytics, revenue protection, DSM, and smart metering. Presently, he is working as Senior Vice President with BSES Delhi and responsible for entire network operation. He has shared his vast experience with many utilities, including utilities in Bhutan, Brazil, Nigeria, and also with many universities and delegates from US, UK, and Spain. In India, he is an active member of various technical committees for energy metering and also chairman of CBIP Metering and Standardization Committee. Presently, he is working to develop an ASIC meter with built-in intelligence to ensure no revenue loss due to faulty meters. Welcome, sir. And last but not least, I welcome Mr. Babu Babel to the stage. Mr. Babu Babel served as Joint Managing Director, Secure Meters Limited. He was part of the founding team of Secure Meters and has helped the country adopt electronic metering and improve revenue realization. He helped an Indian brand's growth in international markets. Mr. Babu Babel worked in UK as MD of PRI for 12 years. He helped the company win Queen's Award for Exports. As the head of the energy team, Mr. Babel was instrumental in identifying and opening new markets such as Malaysia and Australia, and building a team is his forte. He has built an effective marketing and sales team. He has helped develop a market for several high-value added products and solutions. In the late 90s and early 2000s, he was MD of Secure Meters UK. Mr. Babel has traveled 48 countries on business and interacts with utilities around the world. He has helped in launching Indian products in competitive global markets and has earned a good reputation for Indian brands. Mr. Babel has also helped Indian utilities adopt high quality and reliability products and helped improve revenue management systems. In the past, he has worked for Larsen & Toubro Limited and Hindalco. Welcome, sir. I now hand over the stage to Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad. Thank you.
A very, very warm good morning to everyone. It's a great opportunity to be here amongst you all. And let me again thank IMA for giving me this opportunity to start the session in the morning today. And the task assigned today is policy 360-degree for distribution system. 360-degree, I don't know how you really take it up. Do you really say that 360-degree starts from 0, again comes back to 360 and starts with 0? If it is that, then I don't know whether we are thinking to go back to the Esther era where we started the distribution system in a very primitive manner. Probably the intent is not that. The intent is that we need to really ponder over the situation, go to 360-degree definitely, but don't aim at going back to the 0. Starting from here, if that's the aim, if that is the thinking that we want to really achieve, what is that? And what is that kind of architecture? What is that kind of model that we are looking for the distribution sector? But before I talk about the distribution sector as such, let us see how we really moved in past, let's say, 10 years down the line. There was time when we didn't have even adequacy of generation. And for last 10 years, we had been struggling to really say that, okay, India is a surplus country. We really turned around this sector, particularly after the Electricity Act 2003, when the generation was delicensed. IPP started coming in big way in this particular sector. And the net result was that the share of IPP in the entire generation scenario as on date stands something like 42 to 43%, which really gave a real boost to this sector. And right now we can proudly say that we are not only self-sufficient, but we are having surplus as far as the generation capacity is concerned in the country. Now, if we really look at it, how did we achieve this? Was it only the IPP who was instrumental in this? Or was it the policy involved which was instrumental in this? Or was it market which was trying to force this kind of scenario and where we are today? Probably similar thing we realized sooner or the later, maybe during the 11th plan, as far as the transmission system was concerned. We realized that we are sooner or the later going to achieve some self-sufficiency in generation, but we do require a proper interconnected grid which will ensure reliability of supply from one point to the other point. This gave us a thought around 10 years back that let us now concentrate on transmission as well. The net result is that you must have heard last 2 to 3 years, we have been adding something like 25,000 circuit kilometers. In 15-16, we could add 28,000 circuit kilometers. And probably this year, we are almost about to achieve something like 25,000 circuit kilometers. 28,000 circuit kilometers getting added in a particular single year is not a small amount. Let us realize that this is the quantum and this is the potential that India can deliver. And the net result is our entire grid is running in synchronous mode, and most of the days we have no congestion in the grid. And the market operates, that is, exchange operates at a single price. Definitely, I don't say that we have really achieved no congestion zone. There are still congestions in certain pockets, but there are plans, and the plans are in such a manner that probably by 2019-20, we should be able to achieve that goal as well. Not only that, even the capability in transmission as on date is to such an extent that we are able to commission the projects in an advance, I mean, maybe around, I think recently quoted this Wada-Nizamabad line, which was commissioned by Power Grid. It's a high capacity line, which was commissioned around 13 months earlier to the schedule. So that's the kind of commitment our power sector or the transmission utilities have as on date. Now again, let us introspect what really went into this, how we did achieve. Did we really resolve the problems of the transmission sector in the last 2 years? And since I can really vouch for it because I was looking after this transmission sector for last 3 years from ministry as Director Transmission, and we had tried to resolve all the issues what the Transmission Association people used to post to us. That was one of the good channel. They used to highlight all their problems. We used to sit across, discuss, resolve all these issues. Most of the issues were related to either forest forest clearances or the ROWs, and these were amicably resolved, whether it was government utilities or the private utilities. Now coming to distribution, the moment I took over, I asked what are the real problems in the distribution sector? Is there a body who can really tell me and pinpointedly tell me what are the problems in this sector? I could see that there is no body, organized body like what we had in case of transmission. Probably that was the starting point, and I really felt, then I started calling people who really are organized like IMA and ITMA. Very funny thing, like IMA, it ends with Ma. Ma is really something which tries to listen to problems of the children and tries to resolve these issues. I really look at it, IMA, ITMA, it's really good to hear these words, but we really need to gear up on this. I'll really call upon IMA, ITMA, and such other organizations to really point out the problems. Let us see where we stand. What are the solutions? We really need to 360 degree. Does not mean that somebody sits in the room and try to rotate 360 degree. But definitely we need to think together, whether it is government or it is private or the public utilities or the state discoms. Let us sit together, find out the problems, and not only the problems, but try to find out the possible solutions, what can really be delivered and achieved, and try to resolve this in a definitive time frame. Probably that's the need of the hour, and we need to do this. Now coming to distribution sector as such. In fact, yesterday also I had spoken on this, and what pains me is, barring a few private utility, probably we don't have a good distribution planning. Let me start with planning itself. there's no good transmission, distribution planning at the state utility level. I mean, this, and the moment if there is no planning, I don't expect that the distribution system will improve in an optimal manner as such. So probably to me, the starting point in distribution is planning. Planning could be in a scientific way by way of having some kind of tools, some kind of softwares, what we try to do it in case of generation or in case of transmission as such. Of course, there are private discoms who have started doing their job in a scientific manner, and they are really doing a good job. Then probably there could be technological solutions to most of the problems. Some of them could be something like because of urbanized area, probably we can have something like underground substations, thinking about the GIS substations. People are even moving towards the unmanned substations. Talks is also going towards the underground cabling, particularly in the smart cities. Then the concept of package substations. This is one of the good things that has come and is being explored now. The concept of HVDS, the concept of distribution automation, including ring main units, development of smart grid, what we have been talking so far. There have been gains, there have been, and the most important, what is still feel, these are all the things that probably is known to most of the people. But one thing which we forget every time, whether it is at the planning stage or the execution stage or even involvement during the operation stage, that is the customer participation in the entire exercise. Probably that's one area which we really lack. And this is the time when we have moved from a deficit situation to a surplus situation, number one. Number two, now everybody will start asking the utility, not the power that they need, but quality power that they need. And if we really have to deliver this quality power, the customer participation is going to be a key area which needs to be focused. So with this few things, probably, and one more thing which I really wanted to point out is if we have to really maintain the reliability, just like what we could develop in case of transmission, grid operators, they do have disaster recovery centers. In case of distribution as well, probably we'll have to now start thinking about the entire chain of, first thing is the primary automation system of SCADA, DMS, OMS, or even the AMIs. And the center, wherever we have a centralized center, in case of whether it is in case of operation or planning, we should have a backup data recovery center as such, distribution which houses all the data as such. So with these few insight, I'll now leave the floor and I request Mr. Vishal Kapoor to throw a light on the policy aspect of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghanshyamji, and thank you, Ima, for inviting me. As Ghanshyamji also put it, it's basically the session is about a 360-degree overview of how to probably correct the problems in the power sector. And we all know that the country is facing a very paradoxical situation today. We are transcending from a power deficit to a power surplus scenario. And I say this with a pinch of salt, because the paradox is that on one hand, we have a surplus generation capacity, but the offtake of power is not high. And predominantly the reason is also, and there are several people in this country who are not getting electricity at all. Plus, there are several other people who are getting less amount of electricity because of load shedding. So there exists a lot of latent demand that exists in the system on account of people not getting electricity access or getting access of a poor quality, reliability and timing. So basically this is what we have to address, because ultimately the whole intervention is about getting people access to the electricity, and electricity is a merit good. We all know it's important for people to utilize electricity. There are people in far-flung areas who are not having electricity, or it affects basic lifestyle of people, and obviously good reliable electricity is also important from the industrial growth perspective. And so if ultimately we see we have made a lot of forays in the generation and transmission sector in the past, both in terms of infrastructure, in terms of delicensing and other kind of things. Obviously, delicensing, deregulation is not possible in a sector like electricity 100%. But if we see, the whole crux of this paradox comes to one single thing, and that is the ACS ARR gaps of the DISCOMs. For every single unit of electricity that the DISCOMs are supplying to people, they are losing 60 paisa. And with the burgeoning debt problem of the DISCOMs, which was there, 4.3 lakh crores accumulated over a long period of time in the year 2015. So, and any further increase in electricity or the problem of giving 24/7 electricity would have accentuated this problem of debt, and we came out with Uday on that, and our minister rightly points it out to be a scheme which is based on spirit of cooperative and competitive federalism, where the DISCOMs, the central government and the state governments come together. And they have not only come together, but they have put the responsibility and ownership of the DISCOM's performance to where it actually belongs, and that is at the state level. The center is going to handhold and is handholding states for achieving these objectives. The predominant two outcomes of this scheme, everything about this scheme is about two things: getting the ACS ARR gap down to 0 and reducing AT&C losses to 15%. Now, if the ACS ARR gaps, the revenue gaps of DISCOMs become 0, I believe there exists a tremendous latent demand of electricity. At least the people who have access, they can immediately get a lot of the full complement of electricity they deserve. Uday has been, I would not say it's a roaring success, it's early days, but it's a significant success till now. The interest costs have come down by almost about 12,000 crores per year. Bonds worth rupees 2.09 lakh crores have been issued. And 3 DISCOMs, 3 states, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat and Haryana, they have seen a turnaround also in terms of quarterly profits in the last year. And let's not forget DHBVN, a DISCOM in Haryana, for the first time in the history, it has shown a profit. ACS ARR gaps, I talked about that, and ultimately the aim is to reduce that. 60 paisa to 49 paisa today in Uday participating states. Now, this again is a significant improvement in 1 year if it is coming down by almost about 11 paisa, and these are only tentative figures. AT&C losses are down to 22.5% from about 24.5%. There has been another major telltale sign of improvement, and that is basically that the states are now having reduced dependence on subsidies from the state government. That's only going to happen only if the Uday interventions are working. Now, 9 discoms in 7 participating states have reported reduced state subsidy dependence. Another thing that I was seeing just yesterday, and it was such a pleasure seeing that statistic. The outstanding payables is again one major telltale sign. Outstanding payables have come down from an aggregate level of about 19,000 crores ending December 2015 to 13,500 crores. It's by no means, and this is the end of February figures, but there's by no means a very a normal achievement. It's a very, very important achievement. We have come down by a level of about 25 to 30% in terms of outstanding payables, which was supposed to be a concern. Having said that, I would say that even 18,000 crores is not a big amount. If it's just about 15 to 20 days kind of, if you extrapolated number of days, it's only 20 days payment. Now we are down to about 13 or 14 days. Having said that, there are a lot of myths going around in the sector. And which need to be probably addressed or to be understood in perpetuity by people and while analyzing the market and analyzing the power sector. For example, one very important thing was that when Uday came, there was a big story in the market that PFC and REC and these financial institutions, they are going to sink. You are going to see the results of PFC and REC and whatever till Q3 results we have seen. They have not gone down, they have improved their performance in all parameters, sanctions, disbursements. So the power sector financing has improved. Other thing that is regularly talked about is that the energy, Uday is not kind of spurring the energy growth. So as I said, Uday will spur the energy growth only to the extent of latent demand existing in the system. What demand is already existing, that will be fulfilled by Uday, and that's actually happening. Proof of the pudding is in the eating. Some of the Uday states that were doing very badly earlier, like for example Bihar, if you see, the energy offtake has increased almost by about 18 to, if I remember correctly, 18% was the figure. Another thing, AT&C losses are not improving, or ACS ARR gaps are not improving. Now, if you see AT&C losses figures, we have started coming out, we have started asking discoms to give out quarterly results. They are not, let's understand, they are not listed companies. They are not bound to come out with quarterly results. Now, as a matter of good corporate governance under Uday, we are now requesting, cajoling, hand-holding states to come out with their datas every 3 months. And this new system has taken time, but when we, ACS ARR gaps and AT&C loss figures, when we see, we have to see them with the lens that AT&C loss and ACS ARR revenues, consumption, they are all seasonal figures. In summers, there will be more consumption of electricity, and if you are losing for every unit of electricity, the ACS ARR gaps is going to increase in the first 8 or 9 months of the year. So despite that, if you are reducing the AT&C losses, so you can imagine what kind of improvements are happening. Another notion that is prevalent in the industry also, and you know, analysts and even in media, which I would like to dispel here. We have been trying to do it over and over again, but I will utilize this platform to do it again. Tariffs. There's a lot of narrative built around tariffs. Tariffs are not reflective of costs. This is a wrong notion. The problem of discoms is not because of tariff. The regulator is in any case giving the discoms the tariffs as per their projections and allowable costs. So whatever is the gap between ACS and ARR is not because of the tariff, but because of the systemic inefficiencies, computational inefficiencies, nothing else. So tariffs, except in case of, let's say, regulatory assets which are being allowed, except for that, there is the narrative around tariffs not being increased and tariffs being the problem of discoms, that's not correct. It's predominantly the inefficiencies. If you look behind the math of ACS ARR gaps closely, you will find that tariff has no role to play. In this, tariffs are already cost plus and based on projections, and the main problem is basically systemic inefficiencies. And then another thing, cross subsidy, I think it's very important for the industry because a lot of industry participants are here. Cross subsidy is distorting the power market. So subsidies distort the market, that's fine. But is the tariff structure in the distribution companies actually a subsidy to the discoms? You'll be surprised to know that agriculture on an aggregate basis with the state support is rupees 4.26 per kilowatt hour. Domestic is just around this only. Industry is definitely higher, let's say around 6.5. But the issue is that this differentiation between industrial tariff and the domestic or agricultural tariff, is this actually a cross subsidization? It is not. The industry is getting reliable supplies, quality supply. Can you compare the product that is being given to an industry and also to the rural consumers? Obviously not. They are different products, if you think in economic terms. So obviously it's the entire debate about cross subsidy is not entirely correct. We know that Uday is a very, very important initiative by the government of India to correct the problems of power paradox that are existing and to initiate 24/7 supply. And one of the major interventions, and I'm using this platform to talk about it, is smart meters. And smart meters is one of the major tools that we envisage will reduce the AT&C losses to a considerable extent. BIS specifications are in place. The CA has also come out with specifications in August. Testing facilities, we have had 2 meetings with representatives. Testing facilities are available. We do not have any representation from industry saying that testing facilities are not available. Now, still we are finding that the national tariff policy is a major enabler for smart meters, but still we are finding that there is a slowness in the take-up rate of smart meters. Now, I would like to place here one small anecdote. Basically, the new technology will take off only when an ecosystem is in place. HDTVs, for example, came back in the 1900s, in the late 1990s, right? But they never took off. They were there to stay, people were not buying it. Why? Because the enabling ecosystem was not there. The enabling ecosystem was not there. There was no digital content, and that's why it didn't pick up. It started picking up in the mid-2005 to 2010. So basically, there's a small learning that the technology will pick up, a new technology, only when an enabling ecosystem is there. And to our belief, this is the time when smart meters will take off. The enabling ecosystem is in place. There will be some aberrations, but then a start has to be made. Because if a start is not made, let us understand one thing, that the legacy systems, there will be some modifications, innovations in the legacy systems which will not have those capabilities of what smart meters have to take over. And if not now, then probably we'll lose it. So when the enablers are in place, there will be problems, and the government is now encouraging that we are giving it into the hands of the industry. Go ahead, sell your smart meters. The point is, industry also needs to get out of the this is my personal perspective. Industry needs to get out of that perspective of capex spending and purchase of smart meters, because we believe, and obviously I think many of you will agree, smart meters is not a it's not like a chewing gum that I buy, eat it, and that's it. Smart meters need a lot of hand-holding. The capex purchase model of smart meters is, to my belief, will not be a success. It has to be a long-term arrangement. So the industry needs to undergo that structural change, needs to undergo that pain. They need to probably get into tie-ups. We also understand it's meters manufacturers, they are probably not much into operations. They have, some of them have operational fields, but not in a big way. But then probably here is a time when you tie up with other system integrators, you tie up with service providers, you tie up with even analytics and big data agencies, and come out with a value proposition, both in terms of cost and other values that you give to your consumer. The customer is your DISCOM. You got to sell it to the DISCOM, because the customer is never going to buy, this is, a customer is never going to invest into anything if he doesn't find value in the product, and that value has to be shown by the seller in terms of the overall perspective. So it is incumbent upon the industry to come forward with their business plans, with the value propositions to the DISCOMs. And probably there's also, please don't take it otherwise, but we should not start expecting customers to change, because ultimately you got to sell the product. The customer is not going to change. The customer, whenever you sell a product, you make your product in a way that it suits the customer requirements. You can influence the customer. You can tell the customer that, okay, this is the value proposition, so probably you can change your mindset. But then that should not become an impediment in not moving ahead at all. So probably there are challenges, so industry needs to come out with the solutions. We also understand that capex spending model, when it transcends into a capex plus opex model with shared revenues and shared savings, an ESCO model or energy performance contracting model, there is a bit of risk apportionment that will have to be done. Probably you may have to tie up even with financial agencies to finance. So the model has to balance out the investment risk, the credit risk, the performance risk for all the partners in the system. And there cannot be one single silver bullet for that. There has to be several bullets depending upon the various DISCOMs and your customers. So probably this bit of exercise needs to be done, and we are sure that the Indian industry is always a very dynamic industry. It will definitely come up to in fact, today the Indian industry is already, metering industry is a lot of business is going abroad. So here is a time when your country needs you. There is a business proposition, there is a value, you need to come out with a value proposition to DISCOMs. And also let us not try and ape the models that are working outside India onto India. We have to tailor-make. You are the best judge. You people know it the best. So probably we need to have a bit of a change in our methodology and approach. And that's about all. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Vishal. I think you really touched upon some of the very crucial issues, and particularly the ACR-ACS gap, regulatory assets, which is talked about off and on. Then systematic inefficiencies, quality of supply, then the rollout of the smart meters. Probably all these areas are the key areas in the distribution sector as on date. Without wasting much time, I'll request Mr. Mishra to kindly give his viewpoints, but kindly close within 10 minutes.
Right. Thank you, and good morning to all of you. I come here from a perspective of an old hand in a smart grid. And some of you who have met me in my earlier responsibilities can recall what I related to them, that it's up to us whether the market will unlock in 2016 or you will still be struggling there. I'll not say anything more than that. As far as today's session is concerned, policy 360-degree code for distribution ecosystem. I think policy perspective-wise, Kapoor sir has already given you a broad range of interaction point and what is in place. So where I'll focus is the big take of today's my responsibility and my experience in the last time. The transformation of the distribution ecosystem in terms of what is needed for a smart grid. I can vividly recall that there were days when we were talking about 18, 19 parameters to judge on utilities as far as a smart grid readiness and other issues were concerned. When you go to policies, there are only a couple of them which will make the impact. Those are already in place. But unless we talk about the elephant in the room, we will reach nowhere. And the elephant in the room is the trust. That way, the metering industry is well placed and going to be most challenged. It is the lack of trust of measurement which is leading or resulting in everyone's assessment ki okay, there are big losses. But these are the losses or these are the unrealized money? Gone are the days when we were discovering that how customer is tampering the meter. We have already crossed those lines, and now we are discussing how and where we are not able to realize our revenue. And the relevant transformation is the focus has been shifted from meter as a product and what it can record to timely alerts. Whether we can intervene when we have to intervene. I had in the personal experience in Puducherry that yes, the smart grid can take you there. If there is someone who can intervene, he will intervene. But that throws the biggest challenge to metering industry, that they have to move from their location, that is selling a product, partner with other service provider, create an ecosystem of trust. There is a fair degree of trust in what you can measure. There is a big question mark when it comes to what we as a IT solution provider can deliver. And the question mark is about, and it's not necessarily about what they can do. In my assessment, it comes from two very different cultural entities. The utilities hitherto were all decision makers' decisions were about putting a system in place and then system will take care. But where we need a transformation is in case of IT systems, when you deliver a system, that's the time when your work begins. You have to adapt all your processes so that that IT system will deliver the product, the resultant goal. And all those, both the industries are at crossroad because utility is not appreciating, they have to change their process. IT is not appreciating that they have to own the results not till they are delivered but beyond it. And where meter industry is going to make a biggest difference there is to make a partnership with the ICT. And all our transformation initiatives are stuck in this quagmire. The three of them, do they trust each other? As far as money is concerned, it can be found. But unless the togetherness, the teamwork is there is no taker for that money. It's going to be painful. There need to be a transformation, and the transformation will only come about through success stories. So, spread more of them, build more of them, and as far as policy and initiative and persuasion is concerned, as part of National Smart Grid Mission, that is the only job I have. If there are contradictions within the different sections of government policies, they are brought to us, they will be sorted out in well within your expected time limits. But there is a lot more which needs to be done for the trust between the industry players, be it utility, be it metering, be it ICT. And unless that partnership comes for a period, not for the day of delivery, but for a period, the transformation will not come. Let me reassure you that once that transformation has come, we have all the wonderful opportunities, not only for fixing our tomorrow in terms of what we get, but also for fixing what we want to leave for our next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. I think in a new role of as Director NSGM, I think he'll be able to really deliver in the time to come. This definitely reminds me of one thing, what he was speaking, and that is what is most important is probably we need to have a coordination, proper coordination between all the key stakeholders, whether it is manufacturers, whether it is the standards maker, that is could be BIS and the team in BIS, or the policy makers like ministry or CA, or testing facilities, those who are providing, that is the labs, the financiers, the ESCOs, that is the service providers. And one of the key things that probably, which occurs to me is, right now, there is no cadre of IT professionals in the DISCOMs. Probably, I think this is one area which I feel that it's a high time that we have a IT cadre in each DISCOM, which are responsible right at the management level or even the ground level. I mean, the entire chain has to be managed by some IT professionals who can really add value to whatever the data. Of course, we will, with these technologies, we'll definitely have the data in place, but unless it is analyzed properly at the ground level and a proper MIS is formed for taking a good decisions at the top level, probably the data is going to be of no use to us. So if this is to be done, probably the entire structure of the IT professional is required, and this is one area which comes to my mind. Then another one that can be the portfolio management of power purchase. This is another area which I feel each discoms have to gear up. Gone are the days when you used to have the long-term PPAs and depend on the long-term PPAs for your power, meeting the power requirements in the discoms. Now this portfolio has to change between long-term, medium-term, and short-term, and even the day ahead with the exchange. What is the percentage of each of these in the portfolio? That has to be decided depending on your demand, etc. in the of the each discoms. It will be definitely discom specific. Then another area is the renewables coming in a big way. The discoms have to gear up to the situations when the renewables comes, particularly the rooftop or even the large-scale renewables that is going to come in and getting integrated into the systems. What is the impact that it is going to have in your system, particularly the kind of variability it will have? Those impacts will have to be analyzed so that your grid or the entire distribution network, the operational part of it and the providing electricity to your consumer, what we really now calling as 24/7 reliable and quality power to your consumers needs to be ensured. Then another area probably that comes to my mind is right now we are leader in almost, I can watch, we are leaders in transmission, having developed 1200 kV system, AC system, which is right now nowhere in the world. And if I can recall, this entire exercise and the development of 1200 kV AC system was done at Bina with the help of a consortium of the Indian manufacturers. So that's the kind of capability the Indian manufacturers have. If we come together, probably we can showcase our technology to the world. Same thing needs to be replicated in case of distribution as such. We are for you, and even there are states which have become proactive and they have really utilized their opportunities in gaining some finances and gaining some money or revenue by way of even exporting their power to the neighboring countries. These states, I can name it as West Bengal, Tripura, Bihar, even to some extent UP, Manipur. The links definitely is with Bangladesh, Nepal, and even Myanmar. Bhutan, of course, we had been importing. Recently, you must have seen the big news, that is, India has become the net exporter of electricity now. That happened, in fact, last month, and we are really proud to see that. And probably this will increase in the months to come. So this is another area of opportunity for the discoms who can really try to avail this opportunity. Those who are having surplus power, which they are not able to utilize within their own system, can export these powers and really earn revenue out of it. In fact, yesterday, Assam had given the presentation where they pointed out that their SADI SAFI is getting affected because of the availability of power. Probably, I feel it is again the concerns of the management of portfolio of power purchase that you need to do, rather than really saying that you don't have power that is available in the grid. Power is available, and what we need to do is the optimal management of the portfolio. With this quick remark, again, I'd like to invite now Mr. Rajesh Bansal from BSES.
Thank you, sir. I will give my perspective as a head operation who is responsible to arrange power for all of our consumers. We have almost 2.3 million consumers, and I am responsible to ensure that they have power all the time, 24/7, 365 days. So as a distribution man, I would like to share my views on this particular subject. And before I go ahead, I would like to share what exactly we meant by the power distribution business. You know, with the time, the definition changes. I remember when we were doing engineering, I was doing the course in electronic engineering, and our counterpart, electrical engineer, used to tease us that you electronic engineer are milliwatt and we are megawatt. So that was one definition of electrical distribution power. But the most popular one, which we always read in the book, is The power distribution business, the entire electrical distribution chain, there is a generation plant which generates the power. There is a transmission company which brings the power to the city. There is a distribution company which distributes the power. And finally, there is a consumer who consumes the power. And there is a meter which records and you pay to that. That's the general business definition of distribution business. But I would say, since based on my 13-year experience in distribution company, in BSES in Delhi, the definition has totally changed. The definition does not start from generation. The definition has totally changed. Now the definition is, there is a group of consumers who need energy, who need power, and that's what they say, we have a demand. They generate the demand. And that demand is whether predictable or non-predictable. That is the responsibility of distribution company, to predict that demand, to forecast that demand, and ensure that they have the entire infrastructure, to ensure they have the required infrastructure to meet that demand, which is uncertain demand. And then they prepare a schedule and give to the transmission and generation company who has to generate the power as per the schedule. So now the game starts from the customer. Earlier the system starts from generation company. So if the demand is more than or if the requirement of the consumer is more than the generation company, the distribution company can simply announce load shedding. But now the game has totally changed. Now it is the consumer who is controlling, who says, here is my demand. Rather, he's not saying, he's demanding. You have to predict, and then you have to ensure that there is enough generation and infrastructure to this. So if we go by this particular definition, what I found as a distribution man, the term like, this is the one problem with the operation heads, because you always get a phone call. Anyway, so what I was saying, since the consumer, the customer, he has a demand, so any policy which is made by the government, whether relevant to the power or related to any aspect of the life of consumer, will definitely change the demand of the consumer. I again say, any policy by the government, whether it is economic policy, whether it is policy related to the railway, whether it is policy related to the transport, whether it is policy related to any subject, will affect the consumer demand and which will affect the distribution business. And that's how I see it as a 360 degree, that any policy which is there will definitely affect. And now it's the time that rather than talking about the generation capacity and peak demand, we should talk about, can we meet the unpredicted demand of the consumer? So this is the first big change in the definition of this thing. Going further, in last 4 or 5 years, or rather last 3 years, we have heard about 2 different policies of the government. The first policy was power for all, and in continuation to that, there was another slogan, 24/7 power. Now, if we review these 2 policies as a distribution company, and you know, we are off late, we talk a lot about the smart grid policy and other things. And in smart grid, we all of us know the famous 5 maturity level or 5 maturity models, SGMM, which is designed by Carnegie Mellon and IBM, which has defined 5 different maturity levels. Now, for the distribution business also, I would say there are 5 maturity levels. The first level is that we have infrastructure so that all the consumer, all the resident, all the citizens of the country, or all the citizens in a distribution area, they have accessibility to the power. Means they have a power connection. I call it maturity level number 1, which is the basic. The maturity level number 2 is they have a connection and they get 24-hour power, or the power which we say, like for agriculture, 8 hours means they get 8-hour power. If they need 20 hours, they get 20-hour power. If they get 24 hours, they get 20. This is the maturity level number 2. The maturity level number 3 is irrespective of any type of consumer, irrespective of the tariff, irrespective of the policies, he has power whenever he needs. That means 24/7, 365 days. This is the maturity level number 3. Maturity number 4 is you have to ensure the power 24/7, you have to ensure 365, you have to ensure 100% can get power in spite of, now this is the most important, in spite of certain failures. You should have that much redundancy. In spite of sudden demand in the power, in spite of certain incidents which has happened, still you are able to manage. This I say maturity level number 4. And the final is, even if case of disaster, you are able to serve them. This is the maturity level number 5. Now, these are the 5 different levels. In Delhi, I would say we are in between 3 and 4. Maybe we can call 3.5. That is, there is infrastructure, they can get power for 24/7. And if there are small failures, like we have a lot of redundancy in our transmission system and in our grid level, even if one transformer fails, it hardly affects the consumer and other thing. But it's not that if our distribution transformer fails, that still they will get power. No, that much redundancy is not there. So we are between 3 to 3. I would say between 3 to 4 and say around 3.5. And our journey now should be from 3.5 to towards 4. That's logical. But what we are finding is, especially last 1 or 2 years, even sustaining at 3.5 is becoming difficult. Now why? The biggest problem we are facing is the demand is going up, unpredictability is going up, but we have no space to put the infrastructure. So even a policy related to the space can affect the power distribution business. It's not always the policy which are made by the Ministry of Power or Department of Power which can affect. A simple policy related to the space, a simple policy of FAR. In Delhi, in smaller plot, you can have coverage more than 100%. Now you will laugh, how you can have coverage more than 100%. So if you have a plot of 50 square feet or 50 square yard, you construct entire 50 square yard and project a balcony 1 meter behind that. So if the lane size is 2 meters, the 2-person balcony, one from the left side, 1 meter ahead, and cross another 1 meter ahead, and they can just cross from first floor to second floor without going down, without catching stairs or something like that. Now imagine if 2 balconies, they are just touching each other, where my pole will come? So can we expect that the power will be there, sustain will be there? So what I mean to say is not that we have to see. Yes, definitely the people who are in the power industry, they are thinking about the power industry, but it is the total policy which affects. A simple policy like e-rickshaws. We have more than 100,000 e-rickshaws, but how they will charge? From where they will charge? They need 6 hours, they need a lot of power to charge. Now even all such policies, all such decisions, they affect the distribution system. Even a simple star rating system. Now star rating system is mainly based on the consumption. We say kWh consumption versus performance. But what about harmonics? What about the impact of that on whether they are polluting the network or not? So all such policies, they affect, and this is what I just want to say in brief. When we make a policy, whenever we make a policy, whether it's not only the policy which are made by the Forum of Regulators or CRC or Ministry of Power or CA, but the policies which are made by other departments, they also have a big impact because it is the consumer who is get affected. And if the consumer get affected, the distribution network get affected. They are totally interconnected. And small, just we had discussion about that word, cross-subsidy. Yes, as a distribution man and based on my experience and my knowledge and based on my intent, there is nothing wrong in cross-subsidy or there is nothing wrong in subsidy, I would use the word. But the key question is, what is the purpose of subsidy? The purpose of subsidy is, let's reduce the bill so that the electricity become affordable because it's a basic need and it should be affordable. But we can plan the subsidy in 2 different ways. Should I reduce the bill by reducing the tariff, or should I reduce the bill by subsidizing those equipment which can reduce the tariff or which can reduce the bill by, say, subsidizing the power efficient equipments?
Plan with the town planner as far as the space is concerned for the right of way, particularly for the town. This is in picture, and probably we'll try to have some way out on this. And the last suggestion was definitely most welcome, particularly subsidizing the electrical equipment. Probably this could be another thought process which can really trigger the concerns. May I now invite Mr. Babu to say a few words.
Right. Strange industry always is asked to say a few words in the end of it. I'm reminded of The Little Princess. There's a dialogue in Little Princess which said that don't seek the change, go ahead and enable the change. Let me turn the clock back 30 years ago when electronic meters were introduced in the world, and I'll stay a bit because there's a metering conference. And I can wear my hat of being the past president of EMA and talk about the general issues that was raised about partnership. The industry came up with solutions of what was facing the problem. Policies are decided by policymakers. Joe Public elects the policymakers. The policymakers or the legislators and the parliamentarians then select some other policymakers and they form the policy. The good news, ladies and gentlemen, is the Joe Public is now saying we need 24/7, the demand. And I'll use the word customer rather than consumer. We should start treating them as customers because they demand. They are ready to pay for it and they demand. So if you look back, what did the industry do? The industry looked at what were the problems. Temper and fraud was a problem. Accurate metering was a problem. The industry sought challenges. On the grid side, and Mr. Prasad would probably know about that, Mr. Mishra would know about it. On the grid side, we introduced special meters to enable availability-based tariff, totally indigenous development. To make electronics work, and think of a piece of electronics which has to work on an electrical system 24/7 a day. Think of all electronic gadgets you can think of. At the cost that you expect it to work reliably, when you have surges as high as 12 kV, voltage variation as you have, temperature variations you have, the Indian industry stood up and delivered the products. I think the challenge is we need to look at what are we trying to address, what problems are we trying to address. And that's where we need, you talked about cooperation, I'll talk in policy, there has to be, and this is a bit of my experience of working in Europe as well, you need clarity of what you're trying to do for policy. You need then collaboration, cooperation, and other thing is continuity. And let me give an example of what, and let me tell you, when the electronic meter was being launched in the world, India was one of the first countries. In UK and India, this metering was launched. We launched electronic meter ahead of even countries like France or Germany or US. In fact, they mocked at us at that time that electronic meter is not going to work, and it did. We talked about surplus electricity, and I'm just throwing up in challenges because of my age, I can afford to do that. We say we have surplus energy available. Energy, we talk about power and energy, there's an element of time into it. Have you used that element? Most of our meters in the country today have real-time clock. What stops us from introducing time of use tariffs and use the solar surplus that we have? Okay, what stops us from realizing money in advance? We've proven prepayment technologies where you can get money in advance. We have proven cases where states have used it and benefited, where revenues have gone up tenfold. Why don't we learn from the success cases of AT&C loss reduction in Delhi, where technology has been used in an extremely cost-effective manner, where losses have been brought down from 60% down to 8, 9%, 10%. We need to scale that up. Industry absolutely is happy, and I'll now tell EMA's role into this. EMA started interaction with states. We have an outreach program where we go out to states and say, please tell us your issues and we will try and bring the experts and try and help. And that's expanding from, and we've also started offices in different states now. So we have reached out with this. Seminars like this, which are finding more participation, we're doing this. The other thing EMA is going to start doing is start training programs. But as you rightly said, you need a cadre of people. Please remember that the issue that we're trying to address here is not products, it's systems. And when you talk about systems, you need a very different approach, which is what, fortunately, the West has done. So when you have an AMI program or a smart metering program or a smart grid program in EDF or in INAL or in EON, you would have a set of people, hundreds of engineers who will work end-to-end system. There'll be a partnership approach with the industry. So they'll invite the industry right from the beginning saying, this is the end objective that we have, right? Rather than saying, this is the product I need. What is that we're trying to address with smart meters or whatever meters we call it? Because I believe the meters we have are pretty smart. If we address it, and we've seen the results of that, where losses have come down from. Data analytics could be done from that. A lot of our meters have load profiling. Have you used that? Have we done electronic read, which we could do? Because if you get terabytes of data from millions of meters across the country, trust me, we'll all struggle using them. And this is experience worldwide. And the other worldwide experience, I've been involved with a fair few around the world, is when you have a mandated rollout of smart meters, there are several issues. Unless you have a very small geography and it can be done and there's a culture of that, it has to be a user-driven rollout where you understand the application and then you say, okay, this is going to solve my problem. So what are the problems we're trying to solve and at what scale? Other thing is obsolescence. And I may make a slightly controversial statement here. You look at the average age of Indian meter today. It's not that we can't produce quality meters. It's the frequency at which we change our application and then we buy new. So when you make very large, if you're trying to buy 30, 40 million meters or 300 million meters or whatever number of meters we're going to buy, do we need that kind of investment in a short period of time? Or do we want to understand and absorb and say, this is what we're going to do? Keep it open, keep interoperability into play so that you don't get locked into one technology, but get the end application, because what the customer needs in the end is affordability, accessibility, and availability of power, which is also what the government is saying. So technology has to be used appropriately for that. We need to then create processes and people for that, and that's what policy should be enabling us to really deliver. In metering, I can give you a number of examples where Indian companies, and I can tell you with the exposure I have, no other country has developed metering applications as Indian companies have done. And I'm sure Mr. Bansal would probably agree to that. Even Power Grid, when through challenges, those applications were developed. So we can develop those. We have, and let me give another startling statistics. 1/3 of development for smart grid AMI around the world is being done by Indian engineers based in India. Right? So we don't have to go anywhere else in the world. The world is looking for us. We can develop those things. What we need is that absolutely continue. And the other thing which I'll tell you, which you probably alluded to, developing a cadre of engineering base in the states. See, the center has it. When you talk about Power Grid or NTPC, they have it. A continuity of that, you can't keep transferring people, because by the time you absorb technology and if you move on, so if you see Mr. Bansal, he's been there around in BSAS for a long time. He's done it, he's moving from one to another. Similarly, a lot of private utilities would have that. The pretty good people in the, good engineers in government utilities, so don't get me wrong. It's making them stick there, exposing them, sending them to various, of these kind of forums around the world, and creating training programs for which I'm committing on behalf of the industry. We are prepared to work hand in hand with everybody who needs to do that. Let me also tell you about this big thing which hasn't been alluded to is cost. Let's talk about cost of ownership. You talk about trust, sir. Trust has got an element of time, right? Today, you bought millions of our meters, still you want a sample every tender. So if you can't evaluate performance with millions of my products in your system, what would a sample really achieve? But that's the process. We all undergo that and do it, right? So, trust is absolutely mutual. We got to develop that culture of partnerships with vendors and treat vendors as partner, not as vendors, buyer, seller, but as a partner in your business, because we are a stakeholder as well. And I'll tell you, our industry, EMA in general and metering industry in particular, takes a lot of pride in being Indian and giving Indian solutions. And we're supplying it around the world now. We are being trusted. Funny for me to say that a lot of my customers overseas are single source on me. They don't put me through the rigor of retendering. That's the kind of relationship we develop around the world. So it's quite possible. I'll give you a few futuristic things that the industry could do, and we should talk about. There's a lot of infusion of what I call distributed energy resources. It could be generation, or it could be even load control. Now, what is the challenge is going to through? When the world looked at voltages controls, we brought in reactive energy tariff. It's time that we look at another tariff based on distorted pay forms. Trust me, we'll have a huge problem on our hand. You look at the load around the grid today, almost 80%, 70% of it is going to be nonlinear. You look at your home, you look at lighting, you look at television, you look at all the controls, you look at your refrigerators, you have so much of nonlinear load. And look at the generation now. I was looking at the other day, some of these inverters which are being used for solar energy and others. You have voltage harmonics almost 3%, right? What's going to happen to the grid? And once you have solar generation, who's going to take care of the reactive? Who's going to be generating it? And grid defection is going to be a huge challenge. So while I agree on the cross-subsidy argument, Mr. Kapoor, you made, but if you look at, and I'll not talk about, average tariffs, I'll talk about, there are parts of the country where the consumer is asked to pay 10 rupees a unit. He would go for solar, which is 5 rupees. So now a paying customer would migrate to his own source, and the DISCOM would be further challenged. So we in metering industry can help coming out and supporting innovative tariffs and engage the customer by informing the customer. The other thing we should do in policy making is informing and training up the end user of why things are done and what do we expect. And one of the things which IMA had approached the government a number of times, and state governments also, is educating people on temper and what temper does to the Indian economy, not to the power sector. Electricity temper is worth 10 billion pounds, about 1 lakh crore rupees a year, right? I'm sticking my neck out and saying, if you did the analysis, you'll find districts which elect ministers and chief ministers have one of the highest temper and fraud, right? You can't have 30% technical losses because otherwise lines would burn or transformers would burn. So why don't we educate that if you are stealing and not paying, you're impacting the quality, you're impacting life of everybody. And yes, I'm very proud as an Indian that we're exporting energy, but we also have almost 250 million Indians who don't have access to electricity. So it's our collaborative duty as policymakers and also as industry to create an ecosystem which helps us deliver to those 250 million people. And that can only be done if we generate revenue. So metering can be an extremely important part in a clever way, in an engaging way, and it's been done in many parts of the country already and can be done all across. So if we collaborate, that can be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Babu. I think we had a good discussion, and so far it has been unidirectional. That is coming from this side. I think it's high time that we open the house for you all for the question and answers. Any questions?
Morning, everyone. My name is Yukti. I'm an energy lawyer by profession, and I'm also representing Narnik's Technolabs. I have more of a thought-provoking point here because I'm an energy lawyer, and I think most of us here are engineers and not lawyers. But I would prefer show of hands if we have lawyers. And this was the most thought-provoking session for me. We were talking about having representation. It's not only about IITians or engineers which we require for such panels, we require lawyers as well, because we need an overall thought process for anything to be done. I'm also representing women out here. We are a handful of us, but then we are multitaskers and we believe in quality. I take the liberty to speak on behalf of all the women out here.
Thank you. I think
the other point with regards to policy making is that we need, although there's unbundling of the energy sector, but then for policy, we need to understand that there is no duplication and we have to work in coordination with each other on the policy making. So that's what I wanted to make a point out here. Thank you.
I'm sorry, we are running short of time.
Okay.
We need to start the next session on time, so we'll have to wind up. I thank all the eminent speakers for a very informative session, and I'll straight away proceed to the this thing. I request Chairman Meeting Division to present a memento to the session chair. I request Mr. Amit Kumar, General Manager, L&T, to present a memento to Mr. Vishal Kapoor. Mr. Amit Kumar to present a memento to Mr. A.K. Mishra. I request Mr. C.P. Jain to present a memento to Mr. Rajesh Bansal. Mr. C.P. Jain to please present a memento to Mr. Babu Babel. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, we'll have to cut short on the tea break. We are already running about 20 minutes late, so the tea break is cut down to 15 minutes. We'll meet back at 11:35.
We can start the session in time. We are already behind the schedule. All delegates are requested to kindly take their seats. To kindly take their seats. He is the Vice President and Chief Business Development and Power Management at Tata Power Delhi Distribution Limited. Welcome, sir. To honor Mr. Banga, I would like to call upon Mr. Gary Cox, Vice President, Strategic Customer Team, Census. Mr. Gary. Mr. Gary from Census. Huh? Okay. I think Mr. Gary is not here, so I would request Meter Division Chairman, Mr. Jitendra Agarwal, kindly do the honor of Mr. Sanjay Banga. Mr. Sanjay Banga is a veteran with 27 years of experience in power generation and distribution business. And he is the instrumental transformation of Tata Power Distribution Limited. He joined Tata Power in 2003. And he is the initial group which transformed the billing distribution company into a benchmark utility. He was a project director for the implementation of automation roadmap in TPDDL, which includes automatic meter reading, substation automation, distribution automation system, SCADA, DMS, OMS, GIS, and smart metering system. I think we had a discussion, we started discussion with Mr. Sanjay Banga almost 7 rounds back with this, regarding smart meter when this smart meter buzz was not there in India. So he is the pillar of introducing smart meters in India. Now I would like to call upon the speakers, Mr. Udayan Ganguly. Mr. Ganguly is an electrical graduate from Jadavpur University, Kolkata, having power sector experience of almost 3 decades. He is presently as a Deputy General Manager, CSC Kolkata, and viewing the overall AMI operations. He has also played an instrumental role of introduction of electronic meters in CSC almost 10 years back. He is also a member of 8013 BIS committee and has played his role in drafting the Indian standard. Welcome, Mr. Ganguly. Now I would like to call upon Mr. Sudhanshu Gupta. He is from Ernst & Young. Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta is an electrical engineer and has done MBA. Presently, he is working as an Executive Director, E&Y. His field of expertise are smart metering, business models, due diligence, and program management in smart gridsmen. Welcome, Mr. Gupta. Now I would like to call upon Mr. A.P. Singh from PVNL. Mr. Atul Pratap Singh is an electrical graduate, did his MBA, and then completed MTech. He's a software. Mr. Singh is having around 17 years of experience in power sector. Presently, he is working with PVNL Noida and expertise in IT application field. Welcome, Mr. Arjun Pratap Singh. Now, I would like to call upon Mr. Rajesh Nimare, who is the most prominent in product development, understanding the customer requirements, smart grid. So, Rajesh Nimare is an electrical engineer having 26 years of experience. He did his engineering from Government Engineering College, Jabalpur, and presently he is working with Secure Meters Limited as an Associate Vice President and New Product Development. So welcome, Mr. Nimare. Now I would like to call upon Mr. Vivek Chandra. Mr. Chandra is an PhD in Computer Science, did his MTech and B Electrical, and now he is working as a General Manager and Head IT at Purva Kshetra Vidyut Vitran Company Limited, Jabalpur. Welcome, Mr. Chandra. So after having this very wonderful session opening of day 2, I would request Mr. Banga to, the stage is yours, so kindly take it forward, sir.
Thank you, Vinod. Before I start, I express my sincere thanks to AIMA for giving me this opportunity to share dais with eminent personalities we have here, all from distribution utilities and the big force we call who guide this distribution industry as such. And the topic, of course, is extremely relevant considering the government, which has been trying for last, I would say, 2 years for smart metering. Few pilots also started, but somehow still everyone is confused. Everyone is planning to find ways how it is to be implemented. And seeing the scenario or the ecosystem of the distribution sector in India, this is going to be the most challenging project in terms of, I would say, a component of a smart grid, which is very, very tough to implement, and it's more tougher to maintain this system. Because this is not going to be something like, we call it a replacement of LED scheme, or it's a system which is going to change the business processes of distribution utility drastically. The system, when it will be deployed, will be a part of the IT landscape. The system which will encompass the huge communication challenges, the kind of network we have, and more important, the lifeline or the living, I would say, the food of distribution utility, which is metering. The process of entire reading, billing, everything will change. And that is what is making this project very skeptical for each distribution utilities, that how to roll it out. In the earlier session, when there was a thought that this is a project which cannot be a kind of a capex project that a utility take it and then maintain it. It's a project which has to be owned by industries. It is to be project owned by distribution utilities. And for owning them, they have to nurture, of course, the competency in the distribution utility itself.